This podcast is brought to you by RPM Studios, located at 1027 Camels Run Road in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. RPM Studios offers a full line of digital media production services, such as podcasting, live streaming, video production, post-production, multi-track recording, digital graphics. For more information, please check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/RPM Studios. Now on with the show.
Welcome to RPM Studios podcast, in a series where we interview CEOs and leaders of our community, people who shape our lives and shape the city that we live in. Today it's Rich Engler, a man who followed his dreams, risked it all, and watched how the live entertainment business, the music entertainment business has changed, and how the promoting business is now today and how it used to be. A lot of historical things that happened here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and how Rich was a great part of it. He and his wife are the elite of Pittsburgh and have done so much for their community. Rich is an author of the Behind the Stage Door. He is a world-class promoter, husband, and father to 2 children. While in the midst of the height of the rock and roll era, where drugs, sex, and rock and roll was seemingly the way it went, Rich stayed true to his gut, his belief, and his understanding that his life was a blessing. I hope you enjoy this podcast with Rich Engler. We'd like to welcome Rich Engler, promoter of Pittsburgh concerts here in RPM Studios. Rich, welcome. Thanks for coming in today.
Well, Ron, thank you. It's a pleasure, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Rich, you're a promoter, an author of a best-selling book. You've brought in some of the most greatest bands that Pittsburgh's ever witnessed. We want to talk a little bit about that. You're a husband. You're a great father. And a wonderful businessman, obviously, to do the things that you've done. And that is including raising 2 great kids who I know both of them, and really think that the world of both of your son and your daughter. Cindy's a painter. I don't know if you noticed her painting out there in the lobby.
I did see it. No, I did.
We'll have to take a picture of that before, at the end of it, we'll end the segment with that. Rich, one of the things that I think a lot of people ask is, how did you get into this business as a promoter? I know you were a drummer and you were a kid from Creighton, Pennsylvania. And one of the things in your documentary, it's about to come out. Do you have any idea when that's coming out?
Well, they're finishing, they're coming this week and doing some more filming. And after that shoot, they're going to get a couple more testimonials. Phil is doing one. They're going to catch him down in Tampa in the middle of October, and I have a couple. They're getting out of Nashville, and I think once those 3 are finished, they'll be able to come up with a final mix.
So Christmas?
No, I think before that.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
They're pretty fast. I mean, they sent me some pieces of the Bob Marley piece that I did, and another one, and we were just floored. It was killer.
So when someone brought this idea that they're going to do a documentary on you, I mean, you have to stop and think, well, I guess I've arrived. I mean, they just don't go run around doing documentaries on people.
It was actually even better than that, because Paulson from WDVE and many DJs that read the book and looked at the pictures and the whole program, after I'd leave, they would go, "Rich, this is a movie," and I thought that stuck in my head. So I did get the call, like I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and they go, "We read your book. Somebody sent it to us, and we think it's a movie." And I go,
hello?
All right. I go, funny you said that, because, and I tell them that's the same story about the DJs and writers. And they said, but we would like to do a documentary first. We would like to get that out there because we think we can sell your story quickly to a big company. And we also think it could be a series, like a 5-part series.
Wow.
And that's really what they're trying to do. And if it ends up as a movie, it ends up as a movie. That would be fantastic. We'll see where we go there.
Yeah, sure. So a documentary now on the big screen for sure.
Yes.
Wow, that's great. One of the things that I have to constantly, when we were at the Ringo Starr show the other night, there they are, and it's a battery of different artists from different bands. And looking back, I mean, seeing rock and roll kind of change to these kind of bands now. It's like no one is. Are there really any real rock and roll bands anymore?
Well, they're still out there. Yes, perfect example, Kansas. And,
which is coming into Pittsburgh, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have them coming in on October 6th at the Heinz Hall, the Performing Arts, and it's going to be powerful.
You broke that band now, correct?
I did. It was a funny story. I got the album, their first album, and I listened to it, and I heard the song "Can I Tell You Something" on it, and I said, "This is a hit." No, nobody's playing it yet, so I go to the radio stations and I go, "Hey, I really love this band," and music was my life. I mean, it was not. It ended up being my business life also. But in the early days, I was for the movement. I was peace, love, and sunshine. That was me, and I embraced certain songs and certain bands that I loved, and those are the bands I produced: David Bowie, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Kansas. Yeah. Those are the.
I mean, those were the bands. I mean, those were real bands.
Right. And that's what I liked. And that's what I wanted people to hear. So I don't know if I tried to force feed them, but through radio.
Right.
And because that was the big media at that time, there wasn't zero MTV or any of those kind of things. So I did get the stations to go on it. They played multiple cuts off of it. So I had a chance to book Queen. So Queen was obviously Queen and huge, but they wanted to play still theaters. So I booked Queen. And
was this at the Stanley?
This is at the Stanley Theater. Approximately 1974-ish, 75. I don't quite remember the exact date. But I had Queen, and they allowed me to put 2 acts on. So I booked Styx and Kansas on this show. So, boom, sells out like wildfire. And I go, wow, that was really great. Maybe I didn't need the other 2 acts. But little did I know that Kansas sold a lot of those tickets.
Wow.
So that night, that afternoon, I get a call from Queen's manager that Freddie is not going to perform tonight.
Wow.
So who knows what that story was? It really didn't matter at the time. So it was late afternoon. There were people already starting to come into the theater. So I said, okay, we'll make an announcement. So I went and I talked to the bands backstage. I talked to Styx and Kansas. I said, hey, will you play extra long? Can you add some extra tunes, whatever?
Right.
Because we need to fill up the time of Queen. They said, we're on board. So we go on stage.
Did you have to pay them extra money? How did that work out?
No extra money.
Those were the days,
they were happy.
They?
They were happy that, hey, yeah, you want us to play longer? We're in.
Fantastic.
So the story goes, we go on stage. I had Styx ready to fire up, and so I go, ladies and gentlemen, I have a special announcement tonight. Freddie Mercury will not be performing tonight in Queen, but all good news, because the people are great news. Talk to Styx and Kansas. They're going to do extended sets for you tonight. No one's ever had this opportunity. And ladies and gentlemen, Styx! And all of a sudden, the crowd goes, and then the Styx goes into the first song. Nobody
remembered Queen.
or got a refund,
That's great.
which was absolutely incredible.
Only you could sell that too.
But the key was you had to start when you say that you can get your. I also said you can get your money back in the next 15 minutes. And ladies and gentlemen, sticks. Because they go, what do you say? They're not allowed music playing. So it's a good bad thing.
That's funny.
So anyway, Kansas finishes encore, standing ovation, and the crowd is still going wild, and they're off stage, and I'm back there, and I'm going, well, get out there, come on. Can't I tell you? They go, what? We don't even do that song anymore. I said, that's why these people are going crazy for you. They go, oh yeah, it's an E minor. Yeah, okay, let's go. And they ran back on stage and they played it.
Wow.
Thank God. Yeah, I was thinking they're not going to play this and people were going to be so disappointed. So it actually absolutely launched their career.
Well, Jim had some experience with Kansas as well. Didn't you sign one of the guys to your label or something like that?
Yeah, we had signed Kerry Livgren's to a solo deal with his band Protocol, which Protocol is Native American for earliest Kansas. Kaw means Native American for Kansas.
Wow.
Proto meaning the earliest version of.
That's great.
So, and we signed Billy West,
Wow.
who replaced Dave Hope,
Yes.
original bass player. And since I left the label, since it was purchased by Sony and BMG, Kansas, the band is now signed to the label, which is called Inside Out Music. So,
Wow. Very cool.
Kerry's a good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He also wrote the song "Dust in the Wind," right?
and Carry On.
Yeah, Carry On too.
Yeah.
That "Dust in the Wind's" an interesting song. I didn't realize. I saw an interview with him, and it's about a chapter in the Bible about how we end up. No matter what we do, this is where we're going to be. It's a pretty interesting.
Really
interview
nice.
with him.
Yeah. And they're all solid guys.
While we're here, so this is 1 million copies to the records. This is Kansas. I don't know if you can
Leftoverture.
Leftoverture. Yeah, man, this is beautiful. And I've seen many of these in your studio.
Yeah, I have 16 platinum and gold records to my credit.
AC/DC.
And, AC/DC. And there's actually a cassette. The young people who are listening to and watching this are going, what's a cassette?
Yeah, exactly. What is a cassette? Yeah, right. Pretty soon a DVD, right?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about the book. What prompted you? I wrote a book. I have a book on the bestseller list, and I know how difficult it is to
Well,
write a book.
this was almost people. If I go to a bar anywhere or vacation and they know who I am or whatever, they come up to me. They go, "Tell me, who's the best person you ever met? Who's the worst? Who did this? Who did that? Tell me a story." I go, "Wait, hold on. They're not stories. They're traumatic experiences."
Yeah, right.
In most cases,
Right, sure.
So I would tell this story or the two stories, and they go, "You got to write a book," and everybody would end the end of that conversation with "You got to write a book."
Yeah, that's great.
So I started making notes several years before that. I make notes on my cell phone and small notes that remind me of a chapter, and I was able to reduce it to writing. And I love pictures because pictures tell 1,000 stories, and so there's 350 pictures in there as well.
Well, the beautiful thing about this book is of the pictures, and it certainly denotes the time, the dress. It brings you back to the experience, and just seeing you with Julian Lennon and just Kenny Loggins. It goes on and on. I took one of your books signed by you to Peter Asher, and I showed him that picture, and he was just incredibly appreciative.
Peter's a great guy. Peter, aside from having a career of his own with Peter and Gordon,
Sure.
Managed Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor for like ever, and until he kind of gave up management. And
You brought James Taylor in, right?
oh, many times, 50 times.
And he was really the first person when Peter was working on Apple Records,
Yeah,
right?
I took. I had James in. I also did shows in other markets, State College, Erie, Johnstown, Allentown, and wherever.
You know,
Binghamton.
This interview is so much fun because usually you want to try and drop names. There's no one I can drop. I mean, you're talking like Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi. In fact, came to your house one time and John was at your house. Remember?
Oh yeah, and we were Cindy and I were we were in his wedding, not in his wedding, at his wedding.
Right. I mean, he was definitely at home at your place. You know? So, Alice Cooper, Huey Lewis, Bruce Springsteen, David Bowie.
Yeah.
When David Bowie died, I felt like there was a loss in rock and roll. Did you feel that way?
Well, sure. He was one of the true pioneers of that kind of ilk of that edgy Brian Ferry and all the Mott the Hooples and all those bands that were just a little edgy, and David, of course, was the edgiest of all with his multiple talents, and then he did dance music, Let's Dance. I mean,
Spiders from Mars and all that.
Guy was a monster.
Yeah, I mean, he just continued to evolve, didn't he? I mean, every time you thought you knew who David Bowie was, he was off to the next platform.
Yeah,
Neat
and
guy.
I got a guitar signed with David. I did one of his last shows. It was down at the Benedum.
David Jones.
What's that?
David Jones.
Yeah.
Or David Bowie.
Oh, yeah,
David,
right. Yeah. And I'll never forget that show. I wasn't backstage at the very end, and my stage manager, I wanted to choke him. He didn't let him do the second encore, which was Suffragette City, and I forget another song, and we'll never hear it again.
Yeah, that's sad, huh? You as a promoter, I mean, it's a blessing that you found that calling. I mean, we speak a lot on these podcasts. I have a faith-based podcast, and one of the things that I thought about this interview, I'm thinking, your journey is incredible, really. I mean, I'm so blessed.
Well,
I mean, so many guys in this list of people that you've hung out with, worked with, engaged many dinners, hung out, however you want to put it. There are so many of these guys escaped with the retributes of drugs and things like you did, but a lot of these guys didn't. And from me knowing you personally and the things that you've done as a husband and a loving husband and a caring man for the community, raising two beautiful children, which I talked about earlier. But, so many people would have not been able to handle that. And it says so much about your personality and being able to know that person inside, being able to be thankful for you having this opportunity and never really, not appreciating it, I guess is probably the word I'm looking for, or not being thankful for it. And I see that in you because your emotion, what you just said about your backstage guy didn't let him go on. When you're backstage, you're in that show. I mean, you're an active part of that show. And
absolutely.
I hope the promoter side of that comes out in your documentary, because I've been backstage a couple of times watching you, many times walking faster than I ever seen you walk before in my life, and going places and doing things and working it. And how did you learn to do that? I mean, you seem so natural back there.
Well, that's something I always try to figure out myself. I'm from Creighton, Pennsylvania, first of all.
Yeah.
There was zero professionals that I knew of up there. Everybody either worked at PPG, Pittsburgh Plate Glass, which was the first glass company in the United States that made windshields. That's where my father worked. Or they were laborers. It was very blue collar. And nobody ever would even dream of being in the music business, but for me, it kind of evolved. I had a knack of talking to people.
I have to laugh. Excuse me for one second. In the documentary, you make a point of saying your dad said, "There's no money in the music business. What do you want to do that for?"
Right.
I'm sorry. Go on.
Right, because he wanted me to have a solid foundation and work at a mill where I would get a paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever it was, and that's how everybody grew up there. That was the way of life, and I understood that, and I never took offense to it, and it didn't hurt my feelings. I just said, "Dad, I'm going to do it."
Oh, your dad, my dad, they all came from the same ilk.
But he was prouder than anybody.
Sure. Couldn't believe it, but he was proud. Sure.
He was prouder than anybody when we bought the Stanley Theater and built
Is that one of the reasons why you held that close to your vest as an appreciation, as a love, as an opportunity that was a blessing to you? Is that one of the reasons your dad always being there like that? And sometimes, the reality check of your dad saying there's no money in the music business, and you look at him saying that might be true. And then when it was happening, you thought about how many people that are in your business that didn't take it to that level of being the way you are, and bringing it to the places you brought it.
Well, I learned a funny lesson. I think it was one of the kickstarts of my life is when I had a band and I was still in either 11th grade or 12th grade, and we played. We actually got this. It was not a band because there was no bands. The Beatles actually was the first band. Everybody was a combo prior to the Beatles, and we had this combo, and we played it surf music and polkas and anything. But we finally got a booking, and I came home that night, and I said, "Hey, look, I made $20." They go, "You actually got paid? People paid you? And nobody threw stuff at you guys?" And I go, "No, we got paid." And it kind of resonated in my brain that, hey, I just did something that I love and I got paid for it. And that was the kickstart to, hey, I'm going to do more of this.
One of the opportunities I got was to come to your office several times when you were particularly down in the Strip District and that building you guys bought when you moved from the Stanley. And most people don't think about promoters working prior to the shows during the week, and I watched you operate the phones. I mean, I learned so much. Rich, you had, I think, 2 or 3 phones. Remember, you had like
a box.
A box
that could link them all together.
And I got to watch you. And this was the most amazing thing, because when I was coming to do some business with you, I'd come early and they would say, "Just go upstairs. He told you to go." And I'd sit in that big green chair. And I always remember there was this big crystal ball you had off to the side on this. And I'd walk in, and once in a while I'd look at your image on that crystal ball, and you would be clicking these buttons and going, "Hi, yeah, hey, John, yeah, that's exactly what I was telling you. Hold on, click. Dave!" And you would be working 4 conversations simultaneously, and this would go on. And when I was preparing for this interview, I thought, wow, so many people never see that side of you or the promoting business. And when I asked, how did you learn to do that? I mean, some of it, obviously, it was just a gift. But, how much influence did Pat DiCesare, your partner at the beginning, how did all that really kind of manifest itself in the beginning?
Well, it was a perfect marriage because Pat was my big competition because he had some exclusive agreements at the Civic Arena and at the Syria Mosque. And he literally, after I did the Bowie and the King Crimson and 10 years after, and this show and that show and that show, I guess it really showed up on his radar that I had something together. So he calls me one day and says, "Hey, let's have a meeting." And I sat down with him, and he said that he hated the music business. At that time, he was already burned out, but he loved the real estate business. And I said, "Okay, so what's that mean?" He goes, "Well, let's start a business. You run the music, I'll run the real estate, and that'll be it." And he said, "Well, what do we call it? I don't know." So he said, "How about DiCesare Engler?" I said, "Is that alphabetical?" And it was.
That's funny.
So it had a good ring to it. So we shook hands, and a few weeks later, I left. I got rid of my office in the North Hills, and I moved to. Well, I still had the house. We had a house, great house in Ross Township in North Hills. So I drove every day to Monroeville. He had an office in the Johnette building there, which was I was fine with that. So
I remember that office.
yeah, so I drove out there for a couple years, and he would come in and do some real estate stuff out of there, but he really wasn't coming in because he was working out of his house mostly and doing things. I said, "Hey, Pat," I said,
This
is crazy.
Yeah, right.
We're moving the office back to North Hills." So I got another office in North Hills
Well, 1978
on
or
Babcock Boulevard there.
80, you guys bought the Stanley, right? Was that in the 70s?
75.
75, okay.
75. And that's a quick story, too. So every time I do a show down there with Bowie or King
Right.
Crimson or whatever, the manager would come over to me and he goes, "Rich, why don't you buy this building?" He said, "It's really not for sale, but I know Ernie Stern owns Cinemet." He said Ernie would sell this building because he's putting movies in there. It's a 3,500 seat theater,
yeah.
movie theater, and now you can't even find a movie theater over 200 seats.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing was on the wall that this place wasn't going to be long for a movie house or
What
not
a
long
great
for the
venue.
Wrecking Ball.
What a great venue, too.
For
yeah.
the Wrecking Ball. So, and we just, this was perfect. So we struck a deal. We got an SBA loan. I had to put our house, cars, everything up, and ran scared because we had a big, gigantic nut. But
Sure.
we took it from a dying movie house to the #1 theater in the country
That's amazing. It was a beautiful place, wasn't it?
In
And
a
you had
year-
your offices up in the
in
back.
a year and a
there.
half. Yes, the offices were in there. The whole staff was in there. We hired more people, and we cranked. We went also from uh, uh, maybe down the list of the 20th promoter all the way up to #3 promoter in the United States.
Were you sad when they tore it down?
No, we're talking about the Stanley.
Yeah.
No, they didn't tear it down. It's
Oh,
the Benetton.
That's the Benetton. That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, they didn't tear it down. So when we finally sold it in '83,
That's right. I'm sorry.
I drove up a few weeks before to the Syria Mosque.
That's what I'm thinking of. I'm
Right,
sorry.
I'm going to tell that and talk to the Shriners. I go, what if I took all the shows from the Stanley Theater and put them all in the Syria Mosque? They go, impossible. You'd never do it. I go, sign here. So, but I didn't tell them what was happening, that we were selling.
Yeah, right.
So they signed a contract for a multiple year contract. Then I tell them, I said, by the way, we're selling. It's going to be owned by the Cultural Trust. They're going to do a major renovation of the back of the house. They're going to take off the back of the building and put rehearsal studios back there and make the stage wide, deeper. The stage was only 27
small.
feet. Now it's 150 feet.
that's
It's like
huge.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we always had a wide proscenium. It's a 75-foot proscenium opening on the stage. So with that, I move the whole staff. Everybody goes up to the Syria Mosque. We do
Whose
shows.
idea was that? Was that yours? I mean, did you have to talk to Pat? I mean, or did you kind
Well,
of just...
no. Well, I'm sure after I did it, because he had to sign his name along with mine.
I can't imagine Pat just looking
But no,
at
it was a perfect segue. So we then put the office there. 2 years we open. We get a liquor license
Right.
in there.
I remember that.
Selling beer and wine and whatever. I just think beer and wine. And a cabaret downstairs so people could party earlier. And then I had a lot of shows downstairs also. They had a big ballroom downstairs at the Syria Mosque, so we had shows down there. Then all of a sudden, about 2 years into the deal, into a 5-year evolving rollover contract, they come to me and they go, "You have 2 weeks to get out." I go,
What?
Wait a minute. We have the lease.
Yeah.
We're buying you out of the lease.
Wow.
How much you want? I go, "You don't know what we want. You better make an offer. It's got to be huge." He goes, "You can't, you sign here. It's got to be a confidentiality. We'll give you this much money Here's the confidentiality agreement. 2 weeks, you're out of here, right? Yep. So we make that deal. Not Pat and I did. We talk about that. We got to take it. We're out. What we didn't know what the Shriners told us is that Pitt will build
Sure.
a beautiful, second to none hospital for children. Another extension of Children's Hospital at this very site. Little did we know that they were lied to by the university, and it's still a parking lot to this day.
Yeah.
So what happened after we moved out at midnight, after the day after we moved out, they already had a demolition permit, and they came in with a wrecking ball. And once the buildings hit one time with the wrecking ball, that meant demolition started, and there can't be a reverse of the demolition permit. The people picketed like it was horrible.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, everybody revolted because it was an atrocity. It wouldn't have been so bad if there would have been a children's hospital there.
Sure.
But now it's still a parking lot.
Yeah, yeah. When so a good friend of mine, Yale Gutnick, helped develop Star Lake.
Yes.
Well, of course, it's now what is it now?
It's now
some pavilion, not Post Gazette.
First Niagara.
First Niagara Pavilion, I think. Yeah, whatever changes. So during that time, he's out there developing the thing. That had to be one of your go-to places at that point, right?
Saddest day of my life in the music business. We had 350 acres in Adams Township / Cranberry Township.
I remember this.
We acquired. That was one of Pat's things. He went
sure.
out and around it at these farms and acquired. We had major money invested up there, and put in a permit with the Adams Township to build the amphitheater.
The amphitheater prior to the
prior
one
to Star Lake. Prior
sure.
to Star Lake. Made perfect sense. 1979.
Oh, yeah, much better
Turnpike,
place.
USA 80. I mean, US 79. I mean, this was primo. So it gets caught up in negotiation with a couple farmers up there. Actually, it ended up being one farmer. I forget his last name, but it was Jerry something. And he held it up and held it up and held it up. And meetings after meetings, Pat would come back frustrated. Nothing. Next thing I know, a month or two later, I get a call from, I don't think it was from Yale. I think it was from Rodney Eckerman from Pace Entertainment in Houston.
Right. Pace, that's right.
And Rodney goes, hey, I'd like to report to you. We know you're trying to build this amphitheater up in Cranberry Adams, but we're breaking ground next week, and we'll be up and running by next spring.
Wow.
And we want to know if you want to be the partner. So you don't have to think too long.
Sure.
That was a sinking day in my life because that thing was like printing money when it opened up. Although nobody liked the location,
no one.
Everybody hated the entrance, the exit, the whole thing about it.
Yeah, and to get there is really.
It still worked out. I had Billy Joel the first opened the inaugural performance there. My parents had tickets. My dad called me the next day. He goes, "Rich, wish you the best of luck there. We're never going back." It was a nightmare. It took us forever to get there. We got there, half the show was over, and we couldn't get out of there. He said, "Never going back," and they never did. But in spite of it, the facility made big money for at least 10, 12 years, and then it started to wane a bit because a lot of the attractions now weren't going out. It was hard to get. Their model was built on 20 to 30 shows.
Sure.
And if they had 15 shows, it was tough. But they had some good days with Jimmy Buffett, double nights and everything. We kicked some major butt out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Did you know Yale at the time? I'm just was this all happening independently?
I knew Yale. He represented Electric Factory.
Yes.
Out of Philadelphia.
That's right.
And then somehow he knew the Starvagis I think he represented the Starvagis as a coal company.
He did. You're
And,
absolutely right. And so that whole thing started.
Yes.
A lot of times, I mean, he's going to come in and do a podcast because he tells the stories about how he ended up getting that. And the same thing, he was dealing with farmers and people and
Sure.
just, and the township, of course, they're.
Yeah, I'm really surprised though that in his capacity with Electric Factory, that he really worked for Pace in that situation and didn't tell Electric Factory that forget the DiCesare Engler, we're going to partner you with Pace. That's I don't know that answer, but
I don't. That would be a great question to ask him. Actually, he did tell me a lot of stories about how all that kind of unfolded and almost didn't happen. All the other things. One of the things I've always wanted to ask, and I hope I can ask this question. If not, we'll edit it out. But how do you determine your territory in something like that? I mean, because, we have the Balkans in Cleveland. I mean, it just seems like everybody, it's almost like a little mob thing. Everybody kind of just understood that this is their property.
Well, this all came about by Frank Barcelona at Premier Talent. Frank was kind of the godfather of the booking agencies. They were the biggest. CAA was, non-existing. ICM, ATI, Frontier. There were about 15 or 20 bookings, but Frank was really the king, and he believed in tribes of this is your territory. That there were no lines, but everybody knew where they belonged.
That's so beautiful.
Where the Balkans had part of Detroit and down through, and some of Cleveland and all of Ohio and in that area, and we had almost all of Pennsylvania except Philadelphia, because that was Electric Factory, and they had part of New Jersey and Maryland and all that. It was kind of an unwritten situation that you stay in your own territory, and the agents also. So if you tried to stray out of your territory, they'd go, "Well, no, we're selling that to Larry Maggot at Electric Factory, or we're selling this to
Michael Belkin, or
to Michael, to Jules.
Jules, sure.
Jules is still living, and he's a great friend. Jules and Fran, we see them all the time. Jules is, I think, about 86.
I was going to say he's up there, right?
And he's in fantastic condition. And
what
great.
A nice guy. He's always so courteous.
So going back to those territories, then certain promoters then would sign a band to do an East Coast tour, which we did. I ended up signing Sha Na Na, went from New York to Florida with them because they had that TV show.
Sure, yeah.
They were prime time on Saturday evening at 7:00, and I had them, and I had BTO for like 10, 12 cities on an East Coast run. That you could get away with that, but I was kind enough, whenever we got to Philadelphia, I cut Larry in for a 50%.
Nice.
And I cut this guy in down in Alex, I forget his last name, in Atlanta, cut him in for half. Then they also did the work though, and then so it was a good thing.
So you were kind of cut in for half on their territory.
Right.
That's
so
nice.
it worked out. That kind of existed, and that now the whole business, that's a whole other story of what happened after the consolidation of the promoters.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, because is a promoter a dying breed?
It never will be, but it is had to take a major haircut, and I'll tell you why. After the consolidation of all of the major companies, there were about 20 of us that kind of ruled the whole United States, wrote the rules on the rock and roll business, the touring business, the merchandising, the ticketing, all of those different things. We were all absorbed in around 1998 by Robert Silverman, a Wall Street tycoon who had an idea that he could build a better hamburger with as one. And so what he did, he bought all of us, and then Clear Channel heard about this. The radio station giants thought, how great would this be? Buy all of the promoters, which is now, it was called SFX Entertainment, and buy SFX, and we'll have all the radio stations, and would have all the music, the programming from the promoters. So they did. They bought all the stock of SFX Entertainment, and now I had cards for about 2 months that said President and CEO of the Northeast.
Northeast.
For SFX. I knew it was now for same thing, but for Clear Channel Entertainment. Yeah. So we were now Clear Channel Entertainment. So that was working for a while. I hated all of it because I never had a boss, and now I'm conference calls constantly with 20 other people that thought they knew more than the next guy, and it was kind of a nightmare. Then the FCC comes in and calls Clear Channel and said, "Hey, hold on, you have all the programming, you're giving them special rates on your radio stations, and little Joe Nobody trying to get in there, can't get in there at all. What's going on? This doesn't work."
It's a monopoly.
It's a monopoly. So they said, okay, we get it. So they sent out a immediate emergency text emails that for no longer can we promote our shows / your shows, because now we couldn't be in bed with our own company. The FCC put a stop to it. So then after that happened, the stock the shows started not doing so well.
I just remember the music was non-existent.
Yeah, the music was starting to go down. There were less shows. The Clear Channel stock was going down. So they said, we need to spin this off. Now, I wanted out, so I was able to get out in 2004.
Okay. So
I got a severance, and I had to sign a long-term non-compete.
Is that over?
That's over, yeah.
Yeah.
So it better be, because I just had Ringo last.
That's what I was going to say. I won't tell anybody.
So where was I on this story? So
you were saying that now they were losing stock.
Yeah. So they say we're spinning this off, and that's when they spun it off and called it's Live Nation as their own stock and the whole deal. So now the MO of Live Nation, and there's another company called AEG, which is a Philip Anschutz company from LA. These two companies bid against each other for millions and millions of dollars of talent. So if Bruce Springsteen, after he's done with the Broadway, thinks that he might want to go out in 2020, say, and Bruce has been getting $2 million a night versus 90% of the gross, whichever is greater, they'll go, being Live Nation or AEG, and perhaps offer him $4 million versus a 95.5. And if AEG hears about this, they'll go and try to up that
to $5 million.
5, and whatever it takes, and with some filming rights or some merchandising rights and whatever. And that's what happens. So Rich Engler calls Bruce. Yeah, right. And go, Bruce, I hear you're going to go out in 2020. I talked to his agent also, Barry Bell, in New York. Barry, Bruce is going to go out in 2020. I'd like to retain my relationship with him and at least get Pittsburgh or State College or Erie or Harrisburg. And the answer is the same every time. Hey, Rich, Bruce knows you made his life. You were part of his life. He thanks you, but he took the check.
Right.
End of story.
Yeah, because those guys, I mean, if he did 90% of the show, he'd probably be making
That filters all the way down to my last platinum record with what's the Christmas thing that's out there now?
Oh, you mean Bill Taylor?
No. Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Yeah, that from Trans-Siberian Orchestra to Josh Groban to everything. So every major tour of any kind that means anything, they're on top of it. So there are some acts that will not buy into that program, Ringo being one of them, Kansas being another one. Some of these acts that I worked with for years are saying, Rich, you made it. We want to still be with you. Which is a great thing.
That takes a lot of character to be like that. I mean, I saw
really
a
does.
Beatles documentary recently, and they were the very first, when they came to America, they first saw in their contract that they were going to play to a segregated crowd, and they said, that's absolutely not going to happen. We're not going to treat people that way.
Right.
They were the first to say, no, black people, everybody's going to come to our show, or we're not coming.
Yeah, right.
And so they wrote it in, and it went against everything going on in America at that time.
Yeah.
Pretty neat thing. How has that changed rock and roll? I mean, obviously, is that the consumer loses?
Well,
obviously
they're only looking to pick the ripe fruit. They're not looking to grow a tree and create an infrastructure. They're too big. They don't want to waste the time. Now, they say that they're really into bringing bands into clubs and doing some of those smaller shows, but it's kind of a false front. Basically, they're just looking to do the major acts where they can crank. And
so even if you went out and built yourself a Stanley Theater or a Syrian Mosque, it really doesn't matter because you can't.
Well, I think in that case, then the real estate kicks in, and they probably would be a good client.
Oh, I got you.
And I would probably be able to do some shows on my own, and they would be probably the big client.
I got you.
Or if they said, you know what, let's not give them anything, and let's run the place out of business.
Out of business, yeah.
Kansas, they brought the house down. They come out with a couple another album. They moved up. I played them again, headlined at the Stanley. The next was let's move up to the Civic Arena. So I put them up to the Civic Arena. Boom, 15,000 seats sold out. I go, guys, you want to do another night? They go, can we? I go, well, can you? I said, I think you can. I think the crowd loves you that much. So I put a second show on. Boom, sells out.
Sold out.
We break Elvis Presley's all-time record at the Civic Arena for 2 shows.
Wow.
31,000 people to see Kansas.
And they're one of the bands that never forgot that, right?
That's right.
So they're coming back.
Well, they not only didn't forget it, they put out their own documentary about a year ago called Miracles Out of Nowhere. And guess who's in it?
You.
The only promoter.
I know. Yeah. I saw it, actually. So when are they coming to Pittsburgh? I'm excited.
They're going to be on October 6th, which is a Saturday night at the beautiful Heinz Hall. See them up close. The first part of the show is Point of No Return in its entirety, never played ever before. Songs that they've never played on stage also.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the show, there's no intermission. They go right into the greatest hits.
Wow. What a great show. I hope I'm going to be able to still get to it. Is it sold out?
You're invited.
All right.
Never sold out for you.
There's some great seats available. I was talking with Jules' father, Ricky, the other night. He said, one of the greatest lines Rich came up with, he said, the show could be sold out for days. He said, oh, no, there's still some seats available.
That's right. Exactly.
Because if so, we'll put another show on. So, yes, I definitely want to go. I know Jim said he definitely wants to get down to the show. So what do you think that the future holds for not only Pittsburgh, but for these kind of bands? Because, that kind of relationship's lost in so many ways where, these big companies are kind of controlling the flow.
Well, the big company idea would have to implode and kind of vaporize, and we kind of go back to the way it was.
Do you think that's going to happen?
It could. Stock's not moving much.
Well, you know, you see that in many other areas in healthcare where they went out and bought all these doctors' practices. Now they're getting rid of all these guys because they're like, okay. And so, you know, I actually started to see a movement now where doctors are going back and seeing people in their houses. You know,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just have to wait it out, and I'll do what I can do. I get probably 20, 30 shows a year. I have the Byrds coming, the founding members, Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman, at the Carnegie Music Hall in Homestead on the 30th of October. A good friend, Stephen Van Zandt, Bruce Springsteen's guitar player, I have him coming. He's at the Carnegie Music Hall in Homestead as well on October 24th. I just talked about Gino Vanelli out at the Palace Theater in November, a Saturday night. That show's going to sell out. So there's activity out there.
Yeah, you're still doing it. You're just finding a way, right?
Absolutely. And like you said, the book I'm writing another book.
Wow.
I'm about halfway through. Anybody that's interested in Behind the Stage Door, you can still get it on Amazon. You either Google my name or Behind the Stage Door.
Or is it on your website?
It's on my website, but either way, you could get it. richengler.com as well.
Or amazon.com. Just put in Rich Engler and it'll come up.
Or Behind the Stage Door,
Or
right?
Behind the Stage Door. Okay.
Yeah, I personalize them. I sign all the books. So if they say, please personalize it to little Joey or whatever.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Peter Asher was pretty impressed that you signed and sent it to him.
Plus, his picture's in there, too.
So thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate your time, and I think there's going to be a lot of people interested in seeing this.
Well, thank you, and keep on rocking.
All right.